Now, you know what you're really looking for? You're looking for what I call gold mines and landmines. You're looking for gold mines and landmines. A lot of us have been in this persuasion business for a long time. And how many of us have gone into a meeting and stepped on a landmine in the middle of a presentation? I'm sure you've been there. How many have discovered a gold mine during a presentation? You've probably been there too. I have a quick story for you that maybe points this out. I live in Massachusetts, but I like to vacation in New Hampshire at Lake Winnipesaukee. I really love the lake. It's awesome. It's really big and really diverse, and it's right nestled in the mountains. It's like the ocean without salt. And one of the reasons I like Lake Winnipesaukee is I'm a boater. And I've been boating for about 15 or 20 years. And a couple of years ago, my wife and I decided that we wanted to move up a notch in terms of the quality of boat that we have. Now, all boaters do that. A boat is a hole in the water into which you pour money, it said, which is true. Now, I went through this process, and I love to go through this buying process because I like to break down how people persuade you. Now, what makes a good persuader and a bad persuader? What makes people successful in persuasion, and what makes them just mediocre? And what makes them pound their head against the wall waiting for a sale? Now, here's what happened. I had this whole process down to two boats, and I started going to a local boat show in Boston. You walk in there, and there's dozens and dozens of displays. Everybody's trying to sell you something, from a little $15,000 boat all the way up to $1 million yacht. People buy some big, big boats to use on the lake. It's just fascinating, and I really love it. And I want to walk you through the process that I went through. I had this thing narrowed down to two boats, and I go over to boat number one, and I call this guy Ron ahead of time, and he's my sales guy, and he said, Scott, come on down and see me. So I did. I get up on the boat. He meets me in the back of the boat, and he said, Scott, come over here. Let me show you the most important part of the boat. And he immediately goes over to the engine, opens up the engine case, and we walk down into the engine area, and we're in this engine compartment, and we're all scrunched up together. And he says, check out these twin 430 engines and the turbochargers, and check out the hydraulics, and look at the trim tabs on this thing. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I guess this is cool. I like boats, but I really don't care how the engine works. I just want to turn the key and get in and go. You know, I'd actually like to see the rest of the boat. I don't care about the engine. And he said, you got to just see these engines, man. They're fantastic. They're one of the most unique power packages you can buy on this boat. And I said, okay, that's great, Ron. Let's go see the rest of the boat. And so we go up to the boat, the rest of the boat, and everything's fine. I say, Ron, I'll be right back in a few minutes. I got to look at one more boat. So I come over to boat number two, and there's a salesperson sitting on the platform, and the guy looks at me. And as I walk over to the boat, he says, are you interested in seeing this boat? And I said, yeah, I'd like to see it. And, and he goes, before you actually step on the boat, do you mind if I ask you a simple question? How are you going to use the boat? Good question. I said, I'm going to use it on my vacations, and I have a home in Massachusetts, and I'm going to travel up to New Hampshire in the summer to go to Lake Winnipesaukee. I want to use it as much as I possibly can. He said, okay, there's another question I might want to ask you. Who's going to use this boat? And I said, well, ideally me and my wife, and she wants to know how to drive it because she might have to get back into the marina. And you got to know what you're doing when you're out on a lake like Winnipesaukee. And I also have 3 kids that I'd like them to be able to use it as well. And he said, oh, you've got kids? And I said, yes, I do. He said, well, let me just ask you one other question. How many kids do you have? And I said, 3. He then said, would you mind if I show you the number one reason why people buy this boat? Like people in your situation, before we do anything else. And I said, no, not at all. Show me. And here's what we do. We go down into the cabin, and there's a twin beds in the cabin. And right up in the corner, there's a 25-inch TV, a table, and a DVD player. And we're taking a look at the cabin. He says, right there, that's what it is. That's why you buy this boat right here. And I say, what's going on here? And he said, Scott, let me tell you something. Do you want to know something? No boat is big enough for kids, no matter what age they are, let alone 3 kids. He said, you know what happens? You and your wife are going to go out for an afternoon on the lake, and about 10 or 15 minutes into it, no matter what age your kids are, they're going to be bored, missing their phones, missing their internet connections, asking what they're going to do, saying that they're bored, and they're going to be in your face, and they're going to be asking for stuff, lunch or the bathroom or whatever. And this is where you need to open the door and say, hey guys, just go down, go into the cabin, and then shut the door. It doesn't matter what the age the kids are. They need space from their parents. You'll get a couple hours of peace and quiet. You can cruise the lake, smell the coffee, maybe put on some music. Do you think that might help your and your wife's boating experience a little bit? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, happy kids, happy wife, happy me. It's all about me, right? And this is where it all ends up. And I said, I never really thought about that. And he said, I have one more silly question for you. Does your wife have any concerns about safety? And I said, are you kidding? She's concerned, but I'm actually much more concerned about safety than she is. I've been around boats for all my life, and I've seen a lot of accidents. And he said, well, all kids and most adults want to ride right at the front of the boat, right on the bow. But how do you get from the front of the boat to the back of the boat, from the stern to the bow? You know what everybody does? They have to skinny up along the railing, which is usually only 3 or 4 inches high, and it's dangerous. And sometimes people slip and fall off. And he says to me, Scott, this is interesting what this manufacturer did. I think this is really cool. Rather than have your kids or guests or even your spouse having to try to slide around the side of the boat with that tiny little rail, there's 3 steps that they open right out of the cabin, and they can walk right out from the cabin onto the deck without having to deal with the bow rails. And they're not going to have to go around the side of the boat. Do you think that might help alleviate some of you and your wife's concerns about the safety? And I say, yeah, this is really good. And let me ask you, which boat do you think I bought? I bought that one, but that's not the real story.